Hey there, what's up, peeps? It's me again, Carpo, some random douchebag on the internet. Today's video is going to cover many topics, but mainly pertaining to fear and what a waste of time it is to have fear in our lives. I kind of started this video a moment ago, and since this is freestyle, usually my videos are, I mentioned I've always had so many different interests. I go through many phases where I'm into philosophy, or philosophy is pretty much my daily occurrence, but I'm always thinking about things, I'm always processing information. But I've gone through so many different ideas about what I think to be right or wrong or normal or, worth even discussing. When I make a video about a topic, what does it matter? It doesn't. The world doesn't care. The world doesn't need another video about Will Smith punching Chris Rock. The weird shit that's going on out in the world in these certain circles. Or I could even talk about a male swimmer who identified as a female and won a title. That's, to me, these things are some absurdities that we have going on in our world, but this is nothing new. We've always had absurdities. But it always gets me thinking about how society as a whole really finds a way to always find an enemy, always find something to complain about, and always find something to be depressed about, and then use that virtue signaling to say, look at me, I'm marginalized, and the whole world owes me a favor. Not everyone does this, and I applaud those out there who just live their lives and don't play the victim, who don't say, it's because of A, B, or C, or this is my upbringing that caused me all my problems, or it's all my parents' fault, or if only the schools had been better. We have to take a little bit of fucking accountability for ourselves, And I feel like people are becoming pathetic. And I'm not talking about physical weakness. I'm talking about mental weakness, which has reached an all-time high. And hate to say this, but in many of the upcoming generations, a lot of the younger people I've seen are just a bunch of wusses. They can't stand up for themselves without insulting someone else or claiming somebody else is wrong. They can't just say, this is how I feel, I respect your thoughts, and move on with their lives. It's not just the younger generations, but I expected more from upcoming generations. When I was in school in the 80s, I thought, wow, in the future we're going to have information at our fingertips and people will be able to look through the bullshit and say, this is a good thing. They'll be able to see that they've been lied to. They'll be able to understand that they can't always trust what they hear on the news. They'll be able to understand that they can't always believe and trust what they hear from the government. But instead of that happening, a lot of people just dug in deeper and saying, no, you've got to be part of society and you've got to listen to what you're told and wear 10 masks. And I'm just sick of it all. It's all bullshit. It's all fucking bullshit. And I've become so... You see, I don't get physically angry about it. The thing I've learned, if there's anything in life, is to be stoic. But that doesn't mean that you ignore the problems. It means you acknowledge the shit when it comes your way, and you process it, and you move past it. Who am I to have an opinion on anything, right? I'm just a cis, white, blonde, tall, bearded American male with all the privilege in the world. Who am I to complain? I have the right to complain just like anybody else, or to point out the facts. We've become so sensitive about race, about gender, about all these things that even the liberals are finally just going, fuck, this is ridiculous, This is absolutely ridiculous. So, actually this morning I rewatched Ricky Gervais. Ricky Gervais in the Golden Globes, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, where he just tore into Hollywood. Basically called them all pedophiles and said, you guys suck, and they all laughed at themselves, but uncomfortably, because he nailed it. And there's so much shit going on in the world that it's very rare when you see one person with any type of clout or fame to actually step out and say, y'all are fucked up, that Hollywood is fucked up, that the political elites are completely fucked up, and that none of these people represent the average American, the average citizen, or the average person in the world. That we live on this kind of pretentious, arrogant assumption that wealthy people matter or famous people matter. People are famous just for being famous today, not because they've accomplished anything. So I guess what I'm getting at here, because as I said, this is unscripted and I don't have any notes in front of me, I'm just kind of speaking off the cuff, so I apologize if I move, back and forth between ideas, but at the same time, I don't apologize. If you don't like it, turn the fuck off, right? I mean, that's the attitude I've always had. I try to be respectful to people, but I'm like, if you don't want to hear what I have to say, then you can move on. That's the advantage of being a human being. You can move on and not pay attention to things that don't matter to you. But when all these things are pushed in everyone's faces all the time, literally and figuratively, there's only one recourse, and that's to speak out and to say, this is how I feel about things, Then I'm not going to buy into the typical liberal paradigm that you need, that you're just like the Joe Rogan thing, not to bring this up again, but it really, really, really put it into perspective as to how pathetic a lot of the people who consider themselves liberals are and how sad it is. It's almost cringeworthy because I'm a classic liberal. I believe in equality and freedom. I'm not overly nationalistic or believe in teams, but there's so much tribalism out there right now that people really believe that taking a red or blue pill is going to change your understanding on the world or make you a better person. It's bullshit. It doesn't matter. What really matters is being able to acknowledge the stuff that's going on in the world without fearing it, without letting it destroy your life, without letting it make you worry. I mean, look at what COVID did to people. It turned them into a bunch of sniveling, whining cowards over a virus that causes nothing more than a basic fucking cold these days. Omicron is like less than the flu. I mean, it's nothing. And yet people are still out there triple masked while they're hiking in the mountains. This has shown a complete lack of critical assessment and lack of critical thinking and understanding about why we do things. Instead, we just follow what we're supposed to do because we don't want to be seen breaking the rules or doing something wrong. And look, as the hippie guy who goes into the grocery store is the only guy without a mask on over the past several months, it was like, why should I feel like the awkward one? Y'all are just doing what you're told, right? And I'm not saying that, I don't want to get into that debate, but it was a major component over the last couple of years that have really it's really shed a light on how many people are scared. Because you can't always see it. You can see people taking precautions and protecting themselves once in a while, but usually you see people on a very limited basis. You don't know what's going on in their mind. But when you see a mask on them, you can understand that they have a fear. But often you ask them and they say, oh, I don't really care. I'm just doing this because it's the right thing to do. And that's really what I'm getting at here. Let's be honest with ourselves. What is the right thing to do? What do you owe to society? How do you want to be perceived? I personally don't give a shit about other people's opinions other than to know that I'm on the right track in my own life. And I don't mean that other people's opinions determine whether I'm on the right track. But rather, if I get a lot of negative feedback over something that I think or feel or say, then I do some critical self-analysis and say, well, a lot of people feel this way. Maybe I'm wrong, or maybe I should change my perspective. Not to fit in, though, but to lead a better life. And this is where I'm getting at. This is what's important. Your life and the life you live is the most important thing to you. Now, if you make somebody else's life more important than yours, that's on you. Totally. Whatever. Like a lot of people think of that as heroism. Save a stranger and sacrifice your own life. I see it as fucking stupidity. You sacrifice a stranger and, if you save somebody and sacrifice your own life for them, and you have kids and a wife that you leave behind, then you're a horrible parent. You just don't take those risks when you have others that are dependent upon you. This is why family always comes first. That's my opinion, though, and I would be remiss to, not acknowledge that a lot of people would think that's extremely selfish. And I would say yes. Yes. People need to be a little more selfish, but with a better understanding of what that really means. This means you have to be selfish based on the realization that your family, your immediate community is the most important thing. Because if we take care of that first, rather than some social justice warrior shit for some people we've never even met, if we really take care of our own people first, and I mean community, I'm not talking about color or, religion or any of this, but just people around us, and we're respectful to one another, then, things work themselves out. It's the old think globally, act locally attitude. But with the internet, we're able to post some sort of a virtue signal on Twitter and expect to get a big response from it, and it's pathetic. It's really pathetic. I think people have become so fucking pathetic that I don't even know how to address it anymore. Our politicians are scared to even talk about the issues because they don't want to be called a racist or a hater or transphobe. You know what? I think that we need to overcome this and realize that the trans community are not victims. Okay? Races, specific races as a whole are not victims. We have a long history of oppression, of racism, of slavery throughout history from many different cultures. But that doesn't represent who we are as individuals today. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, we need reparations and we need to feel guilty. I have never had an ounce of white guilt. Am I racist? No. Do I need to prove that to anyone? Absolutely not. I also feel the same way about transgender people in sports. Like I said, winning a swimming championship because you're a man who calls yourself a woman? Bullshit. A complete bullshit. You're offending women's sports. Real women. Women who were born as women. Yes, born as women, and it's a real thing that men and women do exist. They decided that they were going to start their own sports because competing against men is difficult because men have a stronger body frame, men have more muscle mass, and testosterone. Common sense. Something we haven't argued about ever in history until now. When all of a sudden, a man can win a woman's sports championship and say, well, I identify as a female, therefore you have to respect me and the media can't say anything bad about me. Once again, bullshit. I don't believe it and I don't buy into it. And I think that in the long run, this is going to be a benefit. That people are pushing shit so hard and others are so cowardly to speak out about it because we're living in a time when, like I say, I should make sure this is clear. I don't give a shit about swimming. I think it's hilarious. I think the whole thing is a joke. I don't believe in, I think competitive sports can be useful, but I also think that the Olympics, things like this are just stupid. They're just bullshit. It's the way you're abusing the shit out of your body to try to be the best in the world at what, so you can just fade in the limelight, It's not just pushing yourself. It's pushing yourself to the extremes to a point where the human body often shouldn't push itself. You get bad knees and, you do damage to your body to try to be the best at one sport. And it's loaded up with steroids and all kinds of other drugs. It's disgusting. It's just like sports and bodybuilding. It's not real. You don't see a muscle builder up there on stage who's actually got that ripped. There might be 1 out of 100 that's actually done that naturally. The rest of them are all just shooting up fucking steroids, and it's disgusting. It's gross. I mean, that's my opinion. That's how I feel about it. But the bigger issue here is that it's overcompensation. When people are insecure about who they are, they want to be known as the best at something. And if you really want to be known as the best at something, don't be a man who joins women's sports. Don't be a guy who builds your muscles to the point where your knees collapse or you blow out your colon because you're trying to lift weights you shouldn't lift. But rather, build your brain, build your awareness, build your intelligence and your philosophy to where you can better cope with life, to where you don't feel like you have to be that guy. And that's just my opinion on the issue. Many issues. But maybe let go of your control over the world and yourself and lower your expectations as to how you expect to be treated. Be flexible, be kind, embrace change. Just live your life. Love and be loved. And that's my Carpus complaints for today. Talk to y'all next time. Be well.